Thomas.
Yeah.
Good afternoon. Hey friends, welcome. Pastor Michael here with Thomas Goodrich. Pastor Patio number 84. We're cranking them out, Tom. We're getting through. We're cutting through stuff. People like it. They like hearing the real deal. I want to encourage you, friends. Pastor's Patio is promoting. Do you need your boat shrink wrap? Talk to Tom Goodrich.
No. The season's over. I shrink wrap boats on the side.
Right.
It's the tent maker in me, which I respect and like.
Well, there might be that
your
stray guy.
jewelry.
Yeah,
so
we're taking orders. Christmas in the city is in full swing. We are looking for partners. If you're interested, please contact me. Also, get on Chrissy's prayer list and Norton's devotional list. We're cranking into 64 countries now between our YouTube channel, Jesus in the City Ministries, and go to the jesusinthecityfellowship.org to dial in and sow into the Christmas in the City here. And fishingforlife.org. Anything to report, Tom?
no, not really. We have our next Dark House Spearing event. That is over through the ice in December for soldiers. We have another one for kids. That's about it. And
you need sponsors?
Talking about your business, my business of jewelry,
Yes.
and I do shrink wrap. I could make a case that any politician that wants to run for office or sits in office should have held a job. Could you also make the case that any pastor should also be a tent maker, hold a job, because it does do, it gets you in the real world, number one. Tell me more. What do you think about that?
Well, I agree. It's being around the regular folks. And frankly,
being industrious. There's something about it being industrious. You want to teach it to your kids. And I do think it's an attribute, the tent maker concept for pastors ain't a bad one.
now those of you listening, you're going, what's Tom talking about, a tent maker? Well, the Apostle Paul, who was Saul before he converted, he was a tent maker. And he was doing that in the Roman cities.
And Jesus was a carpenter.
Jesus
and
was
the
trained
disciples,
by his
some of
father.
them were fishermen.
Well, 4 of them we know.
They had to go cut a living and
Actually,
make a trade.
No, Matthew gave up his job. He was a tax collector.
Tax collector, we had a lawyer, Luke, and what else did we have?
Well, Luke was
Doctor?
a doctor.
Oh.
Luke was a doctor.
Who was the lawyer?
A lawyer?
Wasn't there a lawyer?
Well, Paul had the legal skills.
But Dan used to talk about a lawyer in the mix that wrote one of the Gospels.
Well,
and
Matthew was a tax collector.
Okay.
Mark's was the first gospel, but Matthew took more detail. You know, and in the movie the series The Chosen, which they've went into great detail, they make Matthew, and it's reasonable to believe that he was pretty articulate. And he probably took a lot of notes because he was a bookkeeper.
Now, Judas was a rabble rouser, which speaks to get a job and don't be such a zealot.
Well,
because a zealot ain't bad, but how about get a job?
Well, Judas was a member of the Zealot party.
Right.
They were, that literally, it was an extreme, what we would call militia group today.
Militia or Antifa. You're zealot.
Antifa's not driven by religion. The zealots wanted to overthrow Rome.
It is a religion. When you talk socialism, communism, it's a religion.
Well, it's a religion.
But in any case,
you're right.
He was a zealot,
You're
which
right.
explained we got that word from there.
Yes, that's true. That is true. And to your point, their judgment is always clouded with their extreme passion without being teachable. I mean, you're passionate, I'm passionate,
And being industrious and tent making, you got to learn. You have to be teachable to hold a job.
And you got to be able to market your wares, talk about your life, and engage with people and work with people that are in the secular world.
Thank you.
I mean, the fishing business, and Al and Ron Linder, of course, they really took that to the extremes in a good way.
Yeah, they had business first, and they wanted to do it as ministry, and a little different. But
through my connection with the jewelry industry, in fact, I was talking to my friend Eli today. He's a Orthodox Jew in New York City, and he's a diamond dealer. He's in his mid-80s. I've known him for 35 years, and I said, are you and your Jewish friends leaving the city? And he started laughing. Well, his brother's in Tel Aviv. He runs the diamond cutting office in Tel Aviv. He's telling his families to move to Israel because they're so concerned about this new mayor coming in who's anti-Jewish.
Oh.
And see, but my point is, I have inroads into talking to Jewish people where
And my point is, any public servant that wants to make a killing off being an elected official and hasn't held a job or doesn't know any of that.
How the world works.
And my second point is, I almost want to hold that same criteria for pastors.
Well,
now that's a little, I know.
Well,
you're called into pastoral.
Look at that picture I sent out last week. The 8 of us were at the IMF meeting, and well, you go down. Patrick has side jobs. Jeff does. Well, Jeff's sort of retired now from his other worlds. Jerry works at Freedom Works, and he works with Jesus in the City. And Pastor Vaughn, really, he's full-time chaplain.
He drives a bus here.
Yeah, well,
works.
So
he hustles lawn care. Because you make peanuts, number one.
Well,
number two, but I mean, I don't want to begrudge a guy if you're called to ministry and you can do it full-time, great. But you're not willing to go that far, I don't think.
Well, you got to find that line. I had to find the line. When I got called into ministry, I thought I was getting out of jewelry, and the Lord quickly doused that delusional thinking. Tom is looking at a newsletter, friends, from 2007, the summer of 2007, and there's a good 16, 18 pictures there. And we were talking about the last 5 days, 6 days, discouragement, frustration, and sometimes we got to look back, because I want to dial into Galatians 5:7.
You got to look back, and I'm going to go for it because I got a counterpoint.
All right. You were running the race so well. Who has held you back from following the truth? This is in Galatians 5:7. It certainly isn't God, for he is the one who called you to freedom. The false teaching is like a little yeast that spreads through the whole batch of dough. I'm trusting the Lord to keep you from believing false teachings. God will judge that person, whoever he is, who has been confusing you. Paul is dialing into the notion that works can save a person. So Lord, I pray for your guide this conversation that Tom and I are going to have right now. People listening, and the difference between works.
What church is he preaching to?
These are the folks in Galatia.
Okay.
And it was a small church that spun out of Ephesus when Paul ran into 12 guys in Acts 19:6.
Did you tell me a couple weeks ago he really loved this church?
He loved this church.
Opposed to maybe not so much the Corinthians he didn't like as much?
The Corinthians he got angry with.
Okay, but he loved it. Why?
Paul spent 3 years in Ephesus, teaching 5 or 6 times at night, working during the day as a tent maker, and out of that sprung other churches because people were getting sent out. Galatia was spun out of his church plant that he did in Ephesus. So it was a church planting center. Galatians was the first letter that Paul wrote, and they were moving in the gifts, but they were Jewish. People were trying to get in there to sow dissension.
Through the idea that works can get you farther down the road.
They needed to add to the grace by getting circumcised in this case. And that's he calls false teaching yeast. A little yeast sown in spreads through the whole batch of dough. That's pretty interesting stuff. And then he gets this is to those of you who've been around false teachers, they will be judged. Guy, I'm trusting the Lord to keep you from believing false teachings. God will judge that person, whoever he or she is, who has been confusing you.
This has got to be, I want to differentiate some real intentional diabolical, because sometimes I don't know what to teach. You ask me some questions, it's like, that's up to God. He'll have to sort that out once we get there, because I really don't know. And unfortunately for me, I don't get enough black and white from the Bible.
You don't profess to be a theologian, Tom.
Yeah.
The beauty of Pastor's Patio is that we talk about real stuff. You're bringing a viewpoint in in almost a lay, though you're not a lay minister because you've had training, but you really have the ground zero view of being real, and you admit when you don't know something. You don't come in and say this is the way it is, or get lost, or you're gonna burn in hell if you don't do it exactly this way. You struggle with that. I know.
Well, sometimes it feels like God moves the goalpost.
Well,
I mean, He will stop at nothing to get your attention, and that includes marriage, job, family, your own kids. It's like you get wake-up calls, and it feels like He's moving the goalpost.
But that's a good thing.
I know, but it
that's different than giving somebody false information.
Yeah.
God, see that premise you just mentioned is talking about the goodness of God.
Goodness, but painfulness. Holy crap!
Sometimes it is, and sometimes it is, and that's where as a Catholic boy growing up, I had a long talk with cousin Bob last night. We were discussing works, and we were discussing. He was in Catholic school for 8 years growing up, and he gets
nobody shames better.
Oh, he really, he's a wonderful.
You carry that baggage? Is he carrying the baggage?
Oh, he loves the Lord, and he just gets frustrated with bad teaching.
Oh.
And he got into this. I'm not interested in slamming any denominations right now, but the conversation about the issue of purgatory, and we don't find that word and that premise in the Bible. And so I'm not going to blast people for what they believe. What I want to encourage people is go to the source and say what it says. Yeah. And that's what you do. That's what I do. We are trained to do that. We can get off course. We keep each other, we all have, and when we sit in our boardroom planning these chapels for the fall retreat, there's 6 of us. And we challenge each other, right?
Yeah.
Can you really talk about this?
Yeah.
It's the Lone Rangers that get out there. So that was a long answer, but
well, you were talking about looking back. Well, how does that the false teaching? Give me the bridge. What do you?
Well, look at that those pictures. I see a picture of our old friend Dan Ward.
Yes. He
was wonderful at these conferences. Dan's with the Lord now. He passed away about 6-7 years ago. Dan was one of the original guys on Tom's board. He was a dear friend. He was the
New Hope
executive director of New Hope Center / Metro Hope. And we all became close friends. But Dan was a lot older than us, and he had experience in running recovery centers. But I see Dan there, and I'm reminded, Tom, that, he had a lot of humility. He was smart, but he was good. And you got to look back at those pictures from the pastor's sermon, from the outreaches we did. We come along.
See whence we come, from whence.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we knew less than what we do now.
Yes.
In the intensity. And
I would submit that you also have to look forward. Now, hang with me though, because I'm going to turn hard
Go
right
ahead.
here. You have to look forward and be prepared that you or your ministry may not make it into the promised land. There's a dynamite model.
What does that mean?
Well, it means this. I've been down this road before on the air and with you. That if we are truly fighting a battle and it's a static, it means David didn't get to build the temple. Moses didn't get to lead the Israelites. Don't you think that was the desire of their hearts? And yet they fought a war. They've got great stories about David, but he may not get
well, you know what?
the promised land or the temple. And if you look forward and look ahead and go in with eyes wide open, I'm here as a servant and as a soldier, and guess what? My life calling might be to do X, Y, and Z, but I may not get to do Y and Z. I'm carrying the ball, the nuclear suitcase, and I hand it off at the end of my life. Dan Ward, remember he left? his nonprofit that he built from what I think was like 800,000 to 2.5 million, and they dismissed him. They dismissed him after such growth because the economy was exploding and they wanted more.
Tom,
right
when
or
he
wrong?
took it over,
Yeah.
the budget was 250,000.
Yes, and he brought it to 2 mil.
He brought it to 1.5 million. And
it wasn't enough because that economy, that .com economy was booming. The point is,
but he was honest.
Life is hard.
He said, I can't do it. I can't go any. And he was okay with that, but they weren't.
Yeah.
And he ended up down in Kansas.
And that might have been God's desire as well, because that ministry is still thriving. I think it's doing pretty good.
Yeah.
The point is, you didn't get to go to the promised land. For me, you got to look ahead and be prepared for the worst. I'm a worst case scenario. I'm a survivor. I rat hole food and silver and weapons, blah, blah, blah. So I'm looking ahead saying, what if?
Knowing this stuff.
You're saying look back and say,
Well,
we traveled a long ways.
Sometimes you got to do. Listen, Thursday when we were praying at the ministry conference, the conversation of frustration came up. I'm not going to go into detail how it was, but several of our guys, but then one guy said you should never be frustrated in ministry. Well, I've been so frustrated. I bet I can't count the hundreds of times. I have to look back and say, we come a long way.
Yeah, it is helpful to do that.
And somebody asked me the other day, well, actually yesterday, and then I was asked again, because I think about, I had these illusions of, we had 18 ministries coming out of the building at Jesus in the City before COVID and the riots, but the financial pressure was exhausting on that, having that. And I gotta say, there's a new thing coming. I believe, I'm watching you, you're sitting back a little more and not, you're realizing when you're tired and you say it. You don't.
I'm still dealing with West Nile. I picked up this summer, West Nile virus.
Yeah,
so I'm also adding that to the mix.
Is that still?
Yeah, it's hanging around. It came back, so it's put me in the hospital, right. And it was a mosquito bite. And we're talking about West Nile, Nile as in Africa, but it's here as is tick, Lyme disease, and a bunch of other crap and smoke from the north. But the point is, yeah, you say I'm hanging back, but I've got some. Yeah, well, I'm getting tired.
But
I'm tired.
You're honest about it.
Tired spiritually, I'm tired emotionally, and I'm tired physically. And West Nile's got a little to do with it, but so does finances. You're saying we got a new thing coming. Tell me more.
I believe the Lord's trained us all up because we have so many solid guys in our circles that there is going to be a move of God, but it's going to be different. It's not going to be so. I don't think things need to be this stressful and strenuous.
I know, but we do have socialism coming straight down our throat.
That's what I mean.
So how's the body of Christ going to respond?
That's my point. We don't have any solutions on our own power.
That's good inside.
I find in some sort of weird way, I have a relief for that. Because my body, I just want to run to them. Go off the grid into the Rocky Mountains or northern Wisconsin or,
I kind of do, but I also want to fight.
Well,
what does fighting look like?
I don't want to fight in my natural flesh.
I do because that's what I know how to do, but I know that's not how God delivers his people.
No, and that's where God's going to get you and I, Russ and Dan Pilla, and
he's going to surprise
all the other guys, Jerry and Jeff and Norton, and that picture we sent out, 8 of us. And there's other ministers in our, you have Bobby, I think of Van Dickerson, and all these others, Greg Law. God's going to get us out of our comfort zone so that we can't rely on our own power. And that's where I'm coming back to the scriptures, real grace. We can't count on our own devices to do the things that have to be done. Because you said it. Yeah. Socialism's coming down. They slowed it down, with Fry, we dodged a bullet there, but someone asked me a question, what day was it? It's all a blur, about Somalis. I was visiting with a Catholic friend, and they were asking about our ministry, and this isn't a slam, because the outreach to that people group is almost non-existent. We have one friend, Colin and Mary Akers, are involved in an outreach.
I don't know what it is, but you better finish your statement, because I have a statement.
Well,
isn't it just another immigrant group? If you throw back to the Irish, you throw back to the Italians, the Lost,
the blacks,
they all came in with a fury. They didn't want to learn. There was a battle royale, and they assimilate.
The blacks assimilated.
The Italians assimilated. The Irish assimilated.
Do not want to assimilate.
Well, give them time. I don't agree with that. I think the kids are saying, parents, we don't like your old ways, and they're going to assimilate.
I don't see that.
I do see it.
Do you?
Yes,
Okay.
I do. Here's how I measure it. And I will measure the Hmong similar. The Hmong came in, they were running through the hills, shooting every squirrel, and I'm hunting out there, and it was a war zone. They got their attention. They now abide by the rules. The Somalis used to, I'm telling you, they were not polite, just basic politeness. And I'm noticing the kids are polite. I think they'll assimilate. Hey, you are judging your own Italian mafia, what they were doing in New York.
Oh, I agree.
They were going, it was like Giuliani had to come in, and he flattened them out with some legalities. Now,
Riley was one of those guys that got busted.
I think you're not being fair to the time needed for maybe the Somalis to assimilate a generation to. But what I'm worried more about is our own white Anglo-Saxon youth thinking communism is going to solve our problems. That worries me more.
Well,
I think so. Okay, we got a couple.
I appreciate Tom. I've never heard you so optimistic.
Well, okay. I don't know why I just have an affinity to the history of immigration a little bit.
Well,
so
I'm
encouraged about that.
I got to process what you just said, because that's a very.
See, I'm worried about my own kids, and not understanding the price I paid in Afghanistan. That pisses me off. My kids, who are rebel rousers, a couple of them, and they don't know better, and it's out of big, and there's a big group.
The problem is you know, I was listening to some of my podcast earlier of our friends from KSDP and the Garage Logic, and they were talking. It's the education system, Tom.
It's not only that. It's affluence and having so much. You're ungrateful. You don't even understand the liberties and the freedom and the money that comes so easily to you, and you're willing to give it up because.
So that's where God has to break in.
Yeah.
And I have friends that say there's going to be another revival. I still believe that Jesus in the City hasn't reached its potential. I think there's an audience that this conversation we're having right now, and I'm telling you, people, forward this out, because I think this is a hot topic. I think this is something we got to talk about every time we're on the air, even if it's for 5 minutes, because
our youth,
with the way you just framed it,
okay,
is the problem.
It is. I'm going to say
affluence.
Having too much, ungratefulness, not paying any price to live in this wonderful.
They don't know what it came at. They don't know the price. You know, when I was young, when Gabe was young, we'd watch Band of Brothers twice a year. And Band of Brothers, for those of you who don't know, check it out. 10-part series on the invasion of Normandy and the battle through Europe. Okay,
you're saying. Let's just say we got hard times in front of us, and the work of the Lord. I've never been through a revival, so I'm pessimistic about some sort of revival. I think it's going to come and look a little differently. Now, here's the model out of the Bible was unorthodox miracles, i.e. walking around Jericho 7 times, or how is this going to shake out? And who knows? We can't get in front of the Lord, but He may surprise us. A revival?
In 1990, on Father's Day in 1995, I didn't know we were going down this road. There's a church in Pensacola, and it was in Brownsville,
Yeah.
and the pastor's name, he's still alive, is John Kilpatrick. Now, he got a call from an evangelist, and the evangelist says, "Can I preach at your church?" They were buddies, and his name escapes me, but it'll come to me after we get off the air. Steve Hill. Steve Hill was a
Okay.
passionate evangelist, gonna get everyone saved wherever he goes. And John Kilpatrick was burnt out and fried. His marriage was struggling. It was Father's Day. John Kilpatrick says, "Sure, preach." Steve Hill preaches and does an altar call. And John Kilpatrick says, "Why is he doing that? I just want to go out to lunch."
Mm-hmm. This is your revival that you've experienced, the closest you've come.
I visited there twice.
Mm-hmm.
There was a shaking in the building when it was right out of the Bible. It was significant move of God, and they were praying, and people were slain in the Spirit, and it was just an incredible move of God that lasted for hours. People were being healed. They broke. They came back that night. This continued on for 5 years. I went and visited it. Now, Kilpatrick tells a story. He's still around. Steve Hill died. The other pastors that were involved, some of them passed. I went down there in 1999. Gabe was 2 or 3 months old. Tom, they'd line up for blocks to get in at 6 p.m. Then when they started the church service every night, they did the announcements in 10 different languages. Mm. People were coming from millions of people visited the healings were significant. And then there was division. Then there was,
sure.
And then the Assemblies of God were mad at them because they said it wasn't from God. People were being healed. I mean, it was a move of God. Now, I'm not saying that's the way it's going to look, because people try to emulate it. And Kilpatrick would tell you, he just...
Well, the thing that changed me pretty significantly was Promise Keepers. Now, I wouldn't say that's a revival, but it was a move of God.
A significant move of God.
And it moved a lot of men into a healthy sort of new way of thinking about you can actually, being a Christian is not a bunch of don'ts. It's actually a bunch of do's. You can do stuff and
first
live.
the guy gets changed, and that was a move. And I would call that it revived the churches. It revived men.
And it spoke. And along with that was, what's the Heart book that came at the same time?
Well, that would be John.
Speaking to the Heart.
Wild at Heart.
Wild at Heart was right around the same time.
That came out in about 2000.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, the move of God that what you say revival sounds a little not naive, but a clean way to get through this.
I think it's going to be different this time.
I do too, but unfortunately, I have more of a pessimist. It could be.
Well, if you could bring that optimism that you just had earlier into this, I think, because you got very optimistic about Somalis.
About immigration, that I want to give people time and a generation or two to figure it out, and the youth will make it.
That's the most optimistic I've heard you in years, and they all know, because the Tom Goodrich School of Theology is God's mad at me, and so that's why everything's so hard. I'm teasing you, but the Lord, that's an optimistic observation, and then you tie it into the young people that they've had it really good, and they don't appreciate. They don't know what we've made mistakes. We're divorced, different things. We struggle.
We're a generation closer to the last great, abyss, depression. We haven't had that depression. We didn't get to experience it, but at least my mom told me about it, and I remember hearing the stories.
Riley, in his goofy way, he was born in 1928. The Depression started in October 1929, and he was maybe the second. Well, he was there was the only child. Maybe this Angelo was my grandfather, and Florence. So they came here with nothing when they were 15 in 1915, with nothing. So he was working on the railroad. So the Italians made, you had to eat a piece of bread and then a bite of meat, and it was this, the bread would fill you up.
Yeah. Well, I remember my mother vividly telling me, she told me about the Depression. She lived in it.
They never
She said
wasted
a
food.
bag of money could not buy a loaf of bread. It was worthless. And that's spooky to me because, you know, if you
Right.
got some money, you'd think, is this my security? Probably not. But what can be your security? God. And we know that. That's
coming
what
to
we-
that place of
I still want to go be hungry, though.
Well, the Lord, you know, they had a toughness and a resilience to stay a day at a time.
Yeah.
Because they had to. But with our affluence, are we using everything for the Lord? Because, you know, let's dig down here, Tom. If a move of God happens, is the church just ready to handle all these young people coming in? What's that look like?
Well, I would submit to you that the move of God doesn't always look like a church movement. It sometimes looks like a catastrophe, and from there is birthed something. I mean, the flood, right? That's a move of God, and unfortunately, the only wake-up call for people so steeped into their phones and the economy and having abundance is not having abundance. That gets your attention.
The brokenness, and that's what I'm going to pull it back to.
All right.
The brokenness, Tom.
Bring us home.
Okay, friends, we've been talking about revival, dependency, brokenness. Are you struggling with an addiction right now? Are you hurting? Are you wounded? Are you in the middle of a breakup? Perhaps you lost your job. You need prayer. Well, the solution is to surrender to Jesus Christ. And that's what I want to encourage you to do right now, is just to ask the Lord to take away the hardness and watch what happens. Ask Jesus Christ into your heart this evening, whenever you're listening to this video, and say, Jesus, I want you to be my Lord and Savior, and watch what happens. I'm playing Chicago's New Beginnings. Every day is a new beginning in Christ. All things are new. 2 Corinthians 5:17. Ask Jesus into your heart right now. You have a great day, and we will see you soon.
Forward it up.
God bless.